Welcome to the Mindfuel podcast. We are a performance psychology company who work alongside schools to improve student performance and wellbeing. Our aim is to discuss current psychological research in relation to education, reinforcing good practice and sharing techniques from the wider world of performance psychology. We hope you enjoy episode 1, Relationships to Failure. Hello, a very warm welcome to our very first podcast. How are you, Ollie?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm well, thank you. You ever done a podcast before?
Nope, and I'm sure you can all tell very nervous with this. Never really held a microphone before, so even that is feeling weird.
Today we're going to be talking about failure, aren't we? Or the subject around it, the word that is.
One of my favourite topics, I think.
Really?
A lot of experience with failure, shall we say.
Well, by the end of this podcast, that's not going to be a problem. You're not going to look back on it as a negative experience.
No. I will learn from it, as the key message will be throughout this, definitely.
I think that's a good place to start. I don't know anybody that would say that they've never failed in their life. I don't know whether you've got any sort of poignant anecdotes for us, Ollie?
Around failing itself or around learning?
I just want to hear when you failed, really.
You just want to hear. God, I've got a library to go through to think of. We'll go on a professional one rather than personal, because there's just too many of those. But I remember, early days working with a kid and just taking completely the wrong approach. And he wasn't that engaged in school and misbehave and things, and I thought, right, let's take a tough line with him. He needs that kind of male role model idea. Really crack down hard. Don't let him have any leeway with rules and things. And just completely backfired. And, I hadn't built up the respect that he was looking for. I hadn't shown that I cared. I hadn't done any of that and just kind of went in really tough and complete and utter failure. Like, in the end, got kind of moved off working, and that was in my first year. And just from that, and it's something that we'll come to, but from reflecting on it, learn and have hopefully got better. And always think I'd love that situation again, knowing what I know now. But then if I didn't go through it, I wouldn't know what I do know.
Interesting. I think from my point of view, thinking of failure, and I suppose you could call it losing when it comes to sport. I was really not good at it at all. In fact, I dislike to lose now to this day.
I can testify that one.
Yeah, I have a better relationship with it now. And I try and be a better loser with the fact that I know I'm going to learn from it in my mind. But what it led me to do in my sort of late teens, early 20s was stop trying things.
Oh, really?
Yeah, massively. It hurt so much to fail. I suppose because I framed it as the end. It was like a really powerful, clear, you are not good enough. I stopped playing sport. I remember going for drama school auditions a couple of years, and they said, keep trying, keep coming back, and a very minimal amount of people get in, but no, I'd take myself out of the race. In fact, even to the point where I didn't learn the monologues I was supposed to perform properly.
So were you almost looking for an excuse?
Yeah,
if you go in having only half-arsed it, you can be like, I didn't want it anyway, or...
Exactly. I think if I put my 100% effort into it and then I didn't get it, it would tear me apart. But knowing that, well, I didn't really try, you give yourself that fallback.
Yeah. I love the stories we tell ourselves. Like, you wanted those drama auditions, same playing sport, you always want to win. But then when you lose, you'll give yourself an excuse, or you'll create a story around it if you've got that fear of failure, I think, definitely.
Yeah, fear of failure is what it was, I suppose, in a nutshell. For sure, and I think that's quite common,
Yeah, definitely. I think it can be a driver. for some people. So long as they're not, for you, it sounds like it got kind of to a whole nother level. Whereas for some, it can be, it motivates them to work harder, put in the extra hours maybe. You just got to be very careful to make sure it doesn't ever go too far.
Yeah, I talked about a relationship with failure earlier, and I think that's what we're constantly reiterating to the children. It is a relationship. It's an ongoing relationship, and it's not the end. It's not fail, and then the next step it's over. It's fail and then try a different way, or let it inform your next step.
I think reflect, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. You've only really failed if you let that individual failure be the defining factor.
Yeah, definitely. So how now? Because we play sport together. You still do a lot of sport. How have you moved beyond? Do you think?
I think becoming an adult. Well, I say becoming an adult. Trying to become an adult does change things a little bit, and things get put into perspective. I think when you're that age, especially in your teenage years, it's your life. That moment, you're so in the moment in what you're doing, that it's your life.
I think you're kind of hinting it. I think it's your identity as well. So if you failed to win that football match or win that cricket match, you would in your head say the phrase "I am a failure," which is labelling yourself, and therefore your whole person has failed, rather than you said a really key word, you gain perspective on it, and you can now take a step back and be like, okay, I failed to win that match, but that doesn't impact on, I still go home and like your girlfriend's still there, your family is still there, nothing's changed in that regard. Whereas I think sometimes when you're too ingrained in it, you think people think less of you if you fail. And here's where, obviously for the teachers listening, they play a huge role in terms of creating that environment where failure is not something to be avoided, it's something to be embraced. And you go and you seek it out and you fail in a safe space and you can learn from it.
When you say safe space, what do you mean?
So certainly don't shelter children from it, because like you say, everyone will fail eventually. So the worst thing you can be doing is there. It's failing in terms of, link it to sport. There's Saracens have a really strong culture around this, and I love it. They distinguish between effort errors and skill errors, and I think teachers can do the same. So if someone makes a skill error, say drop the ball or they misplace a pass, that's on the coaches.
They take responsibility for that.
They take responsibility. They say, we haven't trained you to a level good enough for you to be able to do that. So same for a student. If they fail a test or whatever it may be, and it's due to their level of knowledge or intelligence, then the teacher can take responsibility and say, I can help you. Next time we try it, I can help you get better. Versus effort errors, where you simply haven't put in the work. You haven't done your 100%. If it's in sport, you haven't covered the meters you need to. If it's in class, you haven't done your homework. And that's where you can begin to differentiate here between types of failure. So there's not just one type of failure, but if you're putting in full effort and you fail, there's no shame in that.
Would you use the word failure? Say you were working with a child.
I think I would. Yeah, I wouldn't shy away from it. I think I would. You can maybe very young. I wouldn't. You can call it learning opportunities, or reframe it into nicer language. But I think you can kind of keep kids a bit closed off from these words when they know it exists and they know what happened. But it's not about the failure. It's about the response to it that's important.
So obviously in schools, tests are used and exams, etc. And they're really important for the teacher and they're really important for the school.
Yeah.
What would you say to a teacher that would say, well, actually, it's a really good tool to use a poor score in a test, to give that child a nudge in the right direction. Because it worked. It worked for me. I remember doing my mock exams for my GCSEs, and my results were awful.
Yeah, I think it definitely can, provided there's the support network, which again comes back to that safe environment idea, for how do we get better from this moment. So it can't just be you got 20% on this test, that's it, like you failed, see you later. Instead, it's got to be, well, what led to that happening? What can you do next time? Kind of begin to be asking these questions and thinking around that idea of the next time you come to this challenge, you're going to be ready. And that's why mocks are really important. I have no evidence behind this, but I'm sure mocks are always harder than the real thing. I don't. It felt it definitely.
But I mean, you wouldn't you, as a school? Because I mean, I suppose it's getting that balance between, you don't want to scaremonger, do you? Especially them kids that you know are not making effort errors, the ones that are trying hard. You don't want to put them in a state of stress for their upcoming exams proper. You want to give the kids that need a little bit of a nudge in the effort sort of side of things, that little nudge.
Yeah, and you know, say in maths, it might be they've only put an effort in certain areas, and you can then highlight to them across that test paper, say, well, actually, where you did put in the effort, you scored the marks. Where you weren't, like, we can see a direct response. But I'd be creating way more opportunities for failure through using testing, so to speak. Getting the old air quotes out again, which on a podcast we know doesn't work, but
I can confirm he did air quote.
Thank you. Just going to, you look at just the science of learning, and it really is strong around using testing wherever possible. We see it. There are so many studies to back this up. If you test the kids, accepting that they are likely to fail, so you're creating that environment and it's fine, it encodes learning once it happens at a much deeper level, so that come the time where they need to retrieve it in a test, it's there.
Is that any way a risk, though, inviting a group of kids to fail? Because if you're in school and you've got your teacher saying, do you know what, you're at this stage, but it's okay, you've failed, and this is where we're going to go from here, and there's that attitude, and the child is comfortable with their progress because of that attitude, and then they go home and their parents ask them how they did, and they say, well, I got this, and they say, well, that's not good enough.
Yeah, you wouldn't.
It's hard to get it across the board, no? Across subjects, across...
Yeah, absolutely, and by no means would I make them an official test. I'm against that idea, but it can be really informal. It can be at the start of the topic, just 10 questions, and you just frame it as, I want to know what you guys know, how much you know. I'm really interested to see, have you, if we're talking history, well, what do you know about British Prime Ministers? What do you know about America between the wars? If you know nothing, that's fine. You're going to have a great time. We're going to go through so much of it. If you know something, I might be able to call on your knowledge. So you can make it really open and easy. And again, you're hiding away that failure. Rather than, like you say, I would avoid giving them a proper test paper and keeping the scores and making it clear that you got 20% versus this kid over there that got 70.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say about Saracens. You said the word culture, and just going back to my point about it being applied across the board. I think that would be brilliant, wouldn't it, in schools to have a school culture that the parents are in on.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, all the schools we've worked with have made a great effort to get parents in, and like you say, if you're looking at a kids support network, it's pretty much the school and parents.
Yeah, it's the one of the great things at the school where me and Ollie met is the community around the parents, the teachers, etc. They had a thing in the mornings called, I think it started as like a reading challenge, but now it's the morning challenge, where students will get in 20 minutes before they normally would, and their parents can come in with them. So their parents come in and they get to do a little morning challenge with them. They get to see how their child works. They get to spend time in their child's classroom environment. This is primary school, but I don't know, it just created that open community that they could see what displays were up on the wall. They could see where the child sat, how they organised their tray, etc., etc. I really liked it. I thought it was important.
Yeah, definitely. And it gave you as the teacher or teaching assistant the chance just to talk with a parent, and they could come up to you, and it just broke down barriers that might exist and
I'd say it wasn't like a meeting every morning.
No,
it wasn't like, I want to talk to you about my child. You would still have to make a set formal meeting with their teacher, but this was more of a, not formal because it's still in school, but more of a, human interaction.
Yeah, that's it. It was just casual, and just even asking how the weekend went. But again, with that morning challenge, it brings it back nicely to the topic of failure. They were tough for some kids, and it would be in all different subjects. And I appreciate this is in a primary school context, but you need to build the culture, which is really important. You need to have that safe environment to allow for failure and just not let it define it.
But at the same time, you need that balance. You need that child or you need that person to be reacting to the failure. You need a safe environment to react to failure, not just accept it.
Yeah, definitely.
I've enjoyed that. Have you enjoyed that?
I had a good time on this one.
The time's absolutely whipped by.
I might actually listen back to this one.
It's worth noting that we have a website and a Twitter and a Facebook.
And, yeah.
You can get us at Mindfuel Perform. That's on Facebook and Twitter. We'd love to hear from you. That'd be great. And our website.
Mindfuelperformance.co.uk.
Smashed it.
Thank you.